Welcome back, friends, to a video that will absolutely ruin your ability to sleep tonight. We're diving into the darker side of human ingenuity. We're counting down the top 10 most excruciating methods of torture ever devised. We all complain about bad days, traffic jams, forgetting your spouse's birthday, accidentally hitting reply all on a company-wide email about your existential dread. But those are fine. Today, we are looking at the real worst days, the kind that makes stepping on a dookie feel like an all-inclusive spa retreat. Seriously. Disclaimer, this is not a how-to guide. Please don't try this at home or anywhere, ever. Viewer discretion is heavily advised. We're focusing on documented, verifiable historical nightmares. So put away the fictional spooky stories. We're dealing with the very real, very painful creativity of our tragically evil ancestors. It turns out, from the ancient Greeks to the medieval courts, humanity has been unbelievably dedicated to the goal of maximum suffering. They wanted confessions, they wanted control, and sometimes, and this is the best part, they just wanted a genuinely horrifying public spectacle. Fun. We've deeply analyzed the sheer duration of suffering, the science of pain, and the overwhelming psychological terror inherent in these methods. The result? A definitive, depressing list of the absolute worst ways to spend your afternoon. Go grab a snack, preferably something bland. You'll definitely need something to keep your stomach settled. Let's dive into the darkness. Starting us off at number 10, it's the classic, the rack. The rack. Want to get into the NBA? Perfect. You will end up about 6 inches taller and screaming for your mother. This mechanically simple design was a favorite in medieval and early modern Europe, especially with the delightful folks running the Spanish Inquisition. A victim was strapped to a wooden frame, and a system of cranks was used to slowly, agonizingly stretch their limbs. The process began with the joint cartilage tearing and the joints themselves dislocating. Continued pressure caused the muscles to tear, and eventually the limbs could be fully ripped from the body. Its sheer mechanical genius was its simplicity. Need a confession? Just add a little more tension. Guilty or innocent, it didn't matter. You were going to confess to stealing the king's favorite socks eventually. It was brutal, effective, and it set a depressingly high bar for the pain to come. At number 9, we have the Iron Maiden, a masterpiece of metalwork if your only goal is to poke someone in the most non-fatal yet deeply painful places possible. Despite its modern fame, its widespread use in the true Middle Ages is highly debated. However, it became a powerful, terrifying symbol of cruelty in the 18th and 19th centuries. The concept is simple: a human-sized cabinet lined with interior spikes. As the doors closed, the spikes would pierce the body, but they were strategically positioned to avoid immediate vital organs. It inflicted unimaginable pain, massive blood loss, and the sheer terror of being slowly crushed, all without the messy commitment of a quick, efficient death. Yeah, just a horrible way to torture someone. Sailing into the number 8 spot is keel hauling. If you're a sailor who loves the ocean, this is the ultimate underwater sightseeing tour. Sure, you might lose a few layers of skin, which, let's face it, needed exfoliating anyway, and you'll probably ingest half the North Sea. But think of the stories. This was a very real disciplinary method used by naval forces, particularly the Dutch Navy from the 16th to 18th centuries, reserved for serious offenses like mutiny. The victim was tied up, dropped from one side of the ship, and dragged under the barnacle-encrusted keel to the other side. The rough wood and shellfish flayed the skin from their bodies, sometimes right down to the bone. This was the Dutch Navy's very aggressive way of saying, "Please stop stealing the rum." And it worked. If the sailors survived the initial trauma, the injuries and the subsequent infection rarely let them walk away. Moving to number 7, we find a device that proves gravity is always your enemy. Curse you, Isaac Newton. The Judas cradle. Used by the Spanish Inquisition and other parts of Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries. This device offered the victim 2 choices: tell us what we want to hear, or enjoy a slow, agonizing slide onto the world's most painful seat. The victim was suspended above a pyramid-shaped wooden point, which was forced into the anus or vagina. The torturer would then manipulate the ropes, slightly raising and lowering the victim. The point itself was rarely immediately fatal, but it caused extensive internal tearing, massive tissue damage, and a near-certain, excruciating death from subsequent infection days later. They called it the Judas cradle, presumably because the betrayal of your associates was much a softer option than sitting through this highly effective piece of engineering. At number 6, the Brazen Bull. Talk about a closed-door meeting. This was the premium, slow roast experience, legendarily invented in ancient Greece around the 6th century BCE for the tyrant Phalaris. The victim was locked inside a hollow bronze bull statue. A fire was then lit underneath. As the metal slowly heated, the victim was subjected to a slow, agonizing death by roasting alive. But the real kicker, the bowl was supposedly equipped with tubes and stops that transformed the victim's desperate screams into the sound of a bull snorting or bellowing. It's early performance art, just utterly morbid. If you're going to be a tyrant, at least have the decency not to turn your public executions into a sick novelty act. Breaking into the top 5 is scaphism, also known as the boat. It starts so innocently. Milk and honey. Who doesn't love that? Used in ancient Persia around 400 BCE, this was reserved for the highest crimes. The victim was placed between two boats, with his head and limbs sticking out. They were force-fed milk and honey until they developed severe diarrhea. The exposed parts of the body were also coated in the sugary mixture. Now, you've been turned into a human buffet, and the waiting staff are all blood-sucking insects and rats. Death took days, sometimes weeks, from a combination of dehydration, sepsis, and being literally eaten alive. These insects would tear through skin and flesh, looking for more of that sweet honey. You don't need sharp objects to be truly evil. You just need a bad diet and a lot of hungry bugs. At number 4, we have a name that says it all. Lingqi, or death by 1,000 cuts. When they said death by 1,000 cuts, they really meant it. It wasn't just a catchy name. This was the ultimate public display of state power in imperial China from the 10th century until 1905. The goal was a terrifying protracted death and spiritual condemnation. The executioner systematically and slowly removed small slices of flesh over an extended period. Hours, sometimes longer. The cuts were non-fatal at first, designed purely to maximize and prolong the pain, before eventually ending with a fatal cut to the heart or a decapitation. If you were looking for an efficient execution, keep scrolling. If you wanted the most painfully protracted, detail-oriented death in history, bingo. A true masterpiece of meticulous, state-sanctioned sadism. Keep in mind the torturer has his sashimi sliced out of his body while fully awake. Imagine the horrible screams. Bronze medal of misery, impalement. The signature dish of Vlad the Impaler in 15th century Wallachia. He didn't just kill his enemies, he furnished his castle grounds with them. The victim was forced onto a sharpened stake. Crucially, the torturer was careful to ensure the stake did not pierce any vital organs immediately, sometimes even lubricating the stake to make the initial descent smoother. Once raised upright, the victim would slowly slide down the stake due to gravity, sometimes taking days to die as the stake forced its way up through their body. It was a terrifyingly effective deterrent. It basically told everyone who passed by, you mess with the prince, you get a very pointy seating spot. Runner-up for the most excruciating, hanging, drawing, and quartering. The British Crown, ever a fan of efficiency, decided that one death wasn't enough for a traitor. Why not give them 4, plus a public spectacle? It's a full-service package of pain. This punishment was reserved for men convicted of high treason in England from the 13th to the 19th centuries. The victim was 1. Drawn, dragged to the site, 2. Hung, but cut down alive, 3. Disemboweled, often with their entrails burned before their eyes, and 4. Quartered, dismembered by 4 horses or chopped into 4 pieces. The entire process was designed to inflict maximum pain, public humiliation, and spiritual damnation. The absolute worst offense? Trying to overthrow a government that puts this much bloody effort into your death. We've saved the best, or rather the absolute worst, for last. Number 1, rat torture. It's a psychological horror show with a horrifyingly physical twist. It takes two universal fears, fire and vermin, and puts them right on your stomach. Documented use in various periods, notably during the Dutch Revolt in the 16th century, and utilized by regimes as late as the 20th century to extract confessions and information. A metal cage containing a rat is placed on the victim's abdomen. The bottom is closed, but the top is heated intensely. The terrified rat, desperate to escape the searing heat, has only one option. It is forced to gnaw its way through the victim's flesh and internal organs.
The invasion is intimate, agonizing, and primal. Forget swords and axes. The most excruciating device is often the simplest and most deeply terrifying. This primal, visceral terror, combining fire, pain, and the violation of being eaten alive from the inside, earns it the spot as the most agonizing torture in history. So there you have it, history's Hall of Shame in the field of pain. Thanks for watching, and try to have a much, much less excruciating day than these poor folks did. You deserve it.